Hello, everybody. Todd Burke. You're most likely students in my physics class, and we're going to talk briefly today about trigonometry. I'm going to see if I can make this tutorial in less than 15 minutes. We had one lecture in class, brief introduction to trigonometry, and this is a follow-up. And I'm going to end with a couple of problems as examples. So hopefully you ought to feel pretty clear, feel like I've made a lot of sense. By the end of this video, you can always rewind it and watch it again. And I'll have two more in this series. As introduction to review, trigonometry is a body of knowledge about triangles. Tri stands for triangle there. And in this case, they're all right triangles. So all these triangles have at least one 90-degree angle. They have one 90-degree angle. And then there are only a finite number of other possibilities for the other angles, and all of them have been studied. Now, trigonometry is a bunch of ratios, known numbers that have all been programmed into your phone, just like pi is a ratio. Pi is a ratio, I don't know if you know, it's actually derived by having the circumference of a circle and dividing it by the diameter of that circle. And it doesn't matter if it's a really small circle or a really large one. When you take the circumference and you divide it by the diameter, you always get 3.14, and it's a long decimal point that goes on forever. But the answer is known, and so you can use that to solve some problems. With these triangles, there are several ratios that are already known, that are already programmed into your phone, your calculator, your computer, and can help you. So trigonometry is just a tool we can use. We'll, in our class, be doing something with sledding. As you know, we're building sleds. And when we go outside and go sledding down the hill, we'll have a little bit of math associated with that. And these tools will help us to find some of the answers we need. So let's say we know some information about a triangle. Let's say that we know that the angle is 22.6 degrees, but we don't know everything about the triangle. We know that the length of this side, the hypotenuse here, is 13. But that's all we know. We don't know the angle. Let's get rid of that. We don't know the length of this side. We don't know the length of this side. With trigonometry, we can quickly find those. That'll be our first problem. Now, to do this, first of all, we need to have a common vocabulary. And I discovered in class, every single person present that day knew that the hypotenuse is the longest side of the triangle. It's also the side that is opposite to the right angle. So directly across from the 90-degree angle is the hypotenuse, the longest side of the triangle. Now, these other two names are universally used by math teachers throughout the world, adjacent and opposite. They're really important in identifying our ratios. There are 6 trig functions, 3 main trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. And they each have a partner function, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But they all are fractions, they're division problems. There's a ratio of the length of this side divided by the length of this side. And you need to remember which one's on the denominator and which one's on the numerator. And it's a lot, so you can get confused. First of all, we need the vocabulary. So we understand what the hypotenuse is. These other words come with respect to an angle. So with this position of this part of the triangle, the far side of the triangle, the part that's on the other side, this is the opposite side. So with respect to this angle, we'll say that symbol theta represents the angle we are interested in. And then on the far side of the triangle, is the opposite side. And if we were talking about a different angle, the opposite would line up somewhere else. But so here with respect to theta, this vertical side is the opposite side. And we'll call the bottom of this triangle here the adjacent side. Adjacent means it's attached to that angle. Now with those two words, we can start talking about our functions. Sine, cosine, and tangent, they are ratios. One side divided by the other side. And then when you have those numbers and divide them, you get a decimal point. And that decimal point is programmed into your calculator already. You need to not be confused and know which number to put in your calculator first, and then divide it by which number is on the denominator. So we have this trick, SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA sounds like three words in an indigenous language. This is not a Native American language. It's not any language. This is gobbledygook. It's made up as a trick to help us remember what sine, cosine, and tangent stand for. So sine is the opposite of our hypotenuse. When I say so, I'm spelling out phonetically SOH. Sine is the opposite. O stands for opposite, and H stands for hypotenuse. So sine of this angle theta is whatever the length of the opposite side is divided by the length of the hypotenuse. And you'd say that like this: sine of theta equals the hypotenuse divided, the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. Cos stands for cosine, which is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So the cosine of theta is the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse. And TOA stands for the third trig function, tangent. Tangent is the opposite divided by the adjacent, where the tangent of theta is the opposite divided by the adjacent. Okay, in this case, we're going to do a problem with this angle. So we're going to use sine as our example. I'm going to take you through two problems. Let's say that I want to find this length. I'm not sure what the length of this side is. I don't know it. I do know the hypotenuse is 13, and I know my angle is 22.6. I'm going to use sine here. Sine is the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. In this case, it's my unknown divided by 13. So I'm going to write it like this. The sine of 22.6 degrees equals my unknown divided by 13. And my hard work is done. Once you have gotten this far, the calculator will help you do the rest. Now we're going to have to simplify. I'm going to rearrange this and simplify, but you're going to be good for that. So luckily, the sine of 22.6 degrees is a known number, and my calculator knows I don't have to. But what I want to do is solve for x. So I need to get x all alone on one side of the equivalency. Right now, the sine of 22.6 degrees equals whatever x divided by 13 is. They're equal to each other. And they'll remain equaling each other as long as I do anything I do this equivalency, I do to both sides of the equal sign. And what I want to do is cancel out this 13. I want to get it over here so that the x is all alone on the right side of the equation, on either side of the equation. So I'm just going to do that by multiplying by a whole number. As long as I do it to both sides, I'm okay. And the benefit now is that these cancel out. Okay, so I've done it. I've succeeded in solving for x. As long as I can figure out what 13 times the sine of 22.6 degrees is. And my calculator knows that. Now, the first thing is with my iPhone calculator, I'm going to put this number in first. Then I'm going to hit the sine button, and then I'm going to hit by multiply times 13, and I'll have my answer. You, on your phone, doesn't matter what kind of phone it is, pull up the basic calculator function that's already in there, and you'll see addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But if you turn it sideways, all of a sudden a whole bunch of extra math functions appear. So you have a lot of fancy buttons, and you'll see the sine functions. So turn it sideways and type that in. With an iPhone, you got to put in this number first, then hit sine, then hit multiplication, the times button, and the number 13, and hit equals. You'll have your answer. With an Android, you can do it from left to right, just like you would read it. You'll end up hitting 13. When you hit sine, you'll see the sine word written, and then an opening parentheses, and you type in 22.6 degrees. I believe just 22.6. You don't need the number. I believe that you can then hit an end parentheses, and if you forget and just punch the equal sign, I think you still get the right answer. In this case, this unknown side, I would get 4.998. I'm just going to round that up to 5. So my answer is about 5. Ooh, so now I have an unknown I needed. I used the fact that my phone or my calculators already got a bunch of trig functions programmed into them. And I remembered SOHCAHTOA. Sine is the opposite of hypotenuse. So opposite of hypotenuse. And I wrote down this expression and simplified it and punched some numbers into my calculator, and I got my unknown answer. So nice job. Okay, next time, do it yourself. I hope that you pause the video now and see if you get the same answer here. And with my next problem, pause it before I even give the answer and see what you get. This time, let's pretend that we don't know the angle. So we know these two sides. We know that the length of the opposite side is 5. We know the value of the hypotenuse as well. And we want to see if we can calculate the angle. We're still going to use, since we have opposite and hypotenuse, we're still going to use the sine function, but now we don't know what the angle is. We're going to say so the sine of theta equals 5, the opposite side, divided by the hypotenuse, 13. So I'm going to say it like this. The sine of theta, you could say the sine of x if you hate this Greek alphabet stuff, which is reasonable. But say sine of theta equals 5 divided by 13. Now I want to solve for theta. In this problem, I want the angle that I'm looking for, my unknown angle all alone on one side of the equal sign. So I'm going to try and cancel out this. I'm trying to divide by sine. If I divide both sides of the equation by sine, this will cancel out. Which is just what I want. So now I have theta all alone on one side of the equal sign. Well, that looks pretty weird. Luckily, it's not weird for my calculator. It's not weird for your calculator. Here's how you do it. There's a little step you need to know about. First, you do this division problem. What is 5 divided by 13? So on my calculator, I type in 5. I hit the divide button. I hit 13. I hit equals. What is that answer? Okay, so now I have that answer. I'm going to look for a button that says second. And when I hit that button, my trig functions change. And instead of saying sine, it says sine to the -1, which is just what I want. A negative exponent inverts this value. It basically takes sine and puts it in the denominator here like this. So 1 divided by sine is this. So I take my known sides, my opposite over hypotenuse, and I divide them, and I get a decimal point, 0.38 something. I hit the second button, and now the second function of sine is sine to the -1. This, by the way, is also the partner function for sine. That's cosecant. But my calculator and my phone don't even use the word cosecant anymore. They just say sine to the -1. So I punch that in. And I hit the equal sign. And what I get here is 22.6 degrees, my unknown angle. So that's our introduction, a review of what trigonometry is and how we'll use it in physics. The parts of the triangle, how I remember the functions, SOHCAHTOA, what sine stands for, sine of theta is the opposite of hypotenuse, and how I use it in 2 different problems. After you've done a few of these yourself, you'll think, this is boring, and every problem will be pretty similar. A couple of numbers will be different, and your answers will be different, and you'll be getting them confidently really soon. So keep practicing.